Hi, everyone. You can hear me, I guess? Okay, so nice for sacrificing a little bit of your time to eat, but feel free to eat. I won't. My topic is what that's possible in Java, and we will see the talk should be or is designed to be a little bit more entertaining than educational. But maybe there's something you learn you can take with you home, try out, or especially don't try out. So let's start. Hi, I'm Michael, but we neither have the time nor are that important to talk about me, so let's straight onto the topic. A warning, the code for this presentation was written by me, so for your safety and the protection of those around you, do not adopt most of the code you're about to see. But I can assure you, no JVMs were hurt during that process. And that are my slides, so we are done. And now we switch to that terminal, and I hope it's large enough that even the last row can see it. Yeah, okay, I see some thumbs. So feel free to interrupt, to throw stuff at me, especially more words than objects, please. We have a little bit time to react to your things if you have an idea, and feel free to answer my questions. There is no wrong. There is wrong, but it doesn't matter if it's wrong. So the idea for this talk was I've seen a lightning talk by Bernhardt, which he gave at CodeMesh 2012, so it's 13 years ago, where he showed some JavaScript examples, some Ruby examples, which were hilarious at that time. And one of these he showed was this stuff, console log, array of 16, join what? What does that print? I heard what, and I think somebody saw the talk. Okay, so that prints what? But what happens if we subtract 1 from here? And I give you a hint. It has something to do with Batman. And it's Batman, of course. That's because if you subtract a number from string in JavaScript, you get, obviously, as a result, not a number, because you can't subtract a number from string. And I mean, when I revisited that talk, I remember my thought was, it's so easy to laugh about other languages, right? All other languages behave strange, you can't control it, but the language you're mainly using, which in my case is Java, that behaves completely controlled, right? There's nothing special, I know exactly what happens, whatever I do. And then I stumbled across a few things that can be done. For example, I mean, we heard it in the keynote, Python is very influential nowadays because of all the Gen AI and LLM stuff. And did you know there's a Python compatibility mode in Java? So no braces, no semicolons. And I can run it, Python Java. It prints devox. So how is it done? Has anybody an idea? What? Replace semicolon, yeah, you get close to it. So probably sometimes you will see me cheating on you just for an effect. So sometimes it's just a matter of how you format your code. So if you put all your parentheses and semicolons so far to the right that they are off your screen, it nearly seems like this could be Python, right? And let me place them here to not avoid or to avoid trouble later. So just a fancy trick. So that's a trick, but if we are ignoring the import on top because we are not using that now, Is it possible to write a Java program which prints something out without a semicolon? Yes or no? Who's for yes? No? Okay. So more no's than yes, but not that much. Yes, it is possible because system out has a few more methods that print something. For example, you can use append. And append, luckily, returns something. It returns the stream you are writing on. So we can, for example, append another one. And because it returns something, we can return that we can compare what was returned to something. For example, is this not equal null? And now we can put that within an if. Yep. And we do nothing. And if I run that, it still works, but we got rid of the semicolon, right? So at least very small programs can be written without the semicolon, which a little bit seems like to be Python. No, not really. There's another method, print, which you can use for the same trick. Okay. So the next one, we stay in the Pythonish thing. Who's ever seen or written Python code? Okay. So what's special if you define an instance in Python and you define instance methods? What do you have to do which seems a little bit special? Self, yes, perfect. So basically you have to write this, right? Live coding is the stupidest idea you can do. Okay, so. And it happens that this works in Java too. So we remove that, and now we can say new this, print 42. And this prints our instance and 42. And that's not a trick at all. That works. You can try this at home. Although I stumbled across it, it was a blog post by, I forgot his name, who does Yoda time in the daytime API, Stephen Colburn. And I stumbled over that, and he said, this is possible, that's documented in the Java language specification. But the only thing he came up back then was, I could now put an annotation on this, just on server or something like that. Because back then, we usually generated stubs which could run on the client, and the server has the other part. And there could be the case that now you can inspect if this method is annotated and my this is annotated, and I only execute it when I'm on the server or such stuff. If you know a better use case, maybe tell me, or do with that knowledge whatever you want to do. But you can do it, and it has to be named this. So if I name it that, it doesn't compile because now I have to pass an instance to the print method, another instance. But this works. Who knew that before? Okay, cool. So you learned something at least. What else is in the Python universe that could be interesting? What about named parameters? For example, we have these utility methods like mapoff, and I can put there a and 1 be 2. But what is what? Wouldn't it be nice if I can say key is A and value is 1? And let's use strings. And this is another key. And this is another value. Luckily, caps lock. Luckily, this works too. We can print it. Let me just reformat it. Because screen space. This prints the map. Anybody an idea how that is done? Secret flag? Sorry? It's evaluated as expression as well, yes. That's the trick. That's the next cheat I sometimes do. Sometimes it's not on the right, it's on the bottom. So just around here, there is a static, or two static variables. And what we often forget is that we can assign a value while using that value. And this, yeah, it's not real name parameters because, I mean, even that would work. But yeah, nice effect. And what you can even do is something like that. That should be possible too. So you can assign it multiple times while using it, and there's more stuff. You can do multiple assignments of a string builder where you call append on, and within the append you can reuse the same, and it gets crazy what you can do with it, but unfortunately not real name parameters. Okay, so, but Python is boring. Next topic. Okay, that's my time. That's another example I find on X from Tagia Valiv, and I guess most of you know what a refactoring is, right? Who knows what a refactoring is? Okay, and one of the propositions of a refactoring is normally that I can do it automatically, and therefore it is safe and will not alter the behavior of my code, right? So, for example, if I use the method foo here and assign it to a variable and only use it at that place, it should be possible to do an inline of that method, which means I get rid of the foo variable and replace it with what is done within the method. And what he wanted with his tweet on X was, is it possible to do something that when I inline that call into directly calling the method, that the first one prints something and the second one throws an exception? So who thinks it's possible? Who thinks it's not possible? Okay. Anyone have an idea? I need to change a little bit of the code, so it's less the tricks. Okay, so maybe I can give you a hint. What is if I do that? I heard someone? Okay, and the second thing is, I need a second method. And when you had that, so imagine we have the integer foo with a big integer with the wrapper beforehand, then this inlining is no longer safe. Because in the first case, we are casting it to an int, and the use method will use the matching one, which is int I. And let's, what is this inlining, right? So yeah, it prints devox and then throws the exception. And in the second case, it will match the wrapper method. So I've not tested if IntelliJ or whatever IDE you use will suggest you that you can inline it, but at least you should not do it if you have that case. I've never stumbled upon it in the wild, but yeah, sometimes the decision to have primitives and wrapper types can hurt us. So be aware. And we stay a little bit on the number thing of life. So, I mean, the void main thing you've heard today, so that's not a trick. That's just working with Java 25. What will be new and is already included as a preview feature is we added this pattern matching in if and switch to the Java language. And what will be new and is currently a preview, as I said, is you can do it on primitives too. So in that case, I can declare an int. And if this int is an instance of a float, and I can bind it to that FL variable, I print that. And if we run it, instance of, it will say I is instance of float FL. And does it work with larger numbers? For example, 16,700,000. Huh? It works too. But what happens now? Will it print something or not? Not? Why? It's too big? Okay. So it does not print it. But what if I do that? It prints it. So it's not too big for a float. But there's a subtle difference. This instance of does not only check bounds. So the value is within the bound of possible values of a float, but it checks more or less if this value could be represented in memory like that float instance. And because float instances are different presented within the memory, that's not true in that case. And around that number, there are multiple values. So 18 works. 19 does not work. Don't want to print. I've not checked it longer, and because I studied business informatics, I'm not into bytes and bits. These are my enemies. But if you use that feature, if it gets final, be aware that this is a subtle difference I personally would not have expected, because I would have expected they are mainly checking if it's in bounds of the other type, because that's what I mostly use. So yeah, that's maybe another thing you learned. Okay, primitive matching. Let me see. Primitive matching bounds. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you probably all know that we compare primitives with equal, right? We run integers.java. That is true, obviously. What happens if that is integer and that true? True or false? True. Okay. See? Yeah. What happens now? False. True. Are you sure? What about 251? Also true. So the people answering false on the first question are basically right, because integers, if I use a wrapper type, have a pool for the very first values to be a little bit more performant. And therefore, small values I can compare with equal. For all other values, I need to use equals. And what most of us learned when we learned Java was that this cache is from minus 128 up to 127. So 128 should be false. But what we don't know is in my run command, there's an option, -xx auto box cache max, where you can influence the size of the cache. So if your program is so special that you need to use lots of these wrappers and you need to squeeze out the last bit of performance, and you know it's just small values, you can tune it, but I assure your colleagues, I don't know. Yeah, basically your knowledge is right, but the bound can be different. Okay, but what about if that's manipulating or manipulatable? We can be sure that 1 + 1 = 2, right? And sometimes it sounds like you don't trust me any longer. And, oh, it's 42. Okay. So this IO println method, that's new. Maybe it's a bug. So let's system out println. That works. Is it a bug? Has anyone an idea what's happening here? Character? No? Other import? No, no. No, basically, if I would, so the first thing, if I would cast both things to integers here, maybe I should cast the complete thing too. The funny thing is, I checked this morning, but I obviously, I hope I have enough braces. Looks like, oof. Yep, thanks. Yeah, okay. Yeah, now it works. So the difference between the two methods is system out println has an overload for int, and IO println has not. So IO println used an object, which is integer in that case, because it gets autocasted to the wrapper type. IO println does not have that overload, so that's the reason why these both methods behave differently. Basically, it's the same like my inlining example, right? But what about this 1 + 1 = 42 thing? I cheated again, I have to admit. I have a static block just in the okay, yeah, just in the bottom. And what I do in the static block is I use reflection to find the integer cache, which is a cache we set to the higher limit beforehand. It's an inner class of integer. We use reflection to get the declared cache field, and then we use field set accessible true because we want to do things only we can use. And then we can get a hold of that cache, and we can manipulate that cache. And you can replace every value you like to annoy whomever you want to annoy. There is a new JEP 500, which is called prepare to make final mean final, which will basically remove that set accessible in some way. Maybe they remove the method, or at least it will not work. But what was funny when I found that out, I first tried to manipulate the 129th entry to 21. That's the value for 1. So 1 + 1, I think it must calculate 21 + 21 is 42. But then you still get 2. And I had to manipulate the value for 2. Because it turns out that the Java compiler sees these calculations and thinks, hey, that's an easy calculation. I can do that at compile time. And in my compiled code, it boils down to print 2. So I had to manipulate 2, which is a nice nice thing you sometimes see. So sometimes the compiler optimizes things that are safe, but that are not safe if I'm doing things. Okay, so numbers behave sometimes strange, but strings are safe, right? So what does it print? Hello? Or something other? who was on the second time because you don't trust me any longer? Okay, sorry, I'm a humble person normally. Okay, it prints devox, of course. So how's it done? Has anybody a clue? The down, yeah. That's the reason why I disabled my line numbers and my wrapping in the editor. Yeah, I need to print a little bit down. Oh, a static block again. Replace hello with devox. Okay, let's see. Oh, a method. Turns out, basically the same thing you can do with the integer cache, you can do with strings. Because if I put a little string in my source code, it gets not put on the normal heap. There is a special string pool where all these source code strings will be living in. And what I'm doing here is, I'm passing my hello instance here, and every time where I reuse hello, it will basically be the same instance of that string, the exact same instance. So I pass my target here, and now there is a declared field value. I can set it accessible true, not any longer, but now I can. And then I can use value set to set on the target the bytes of the replacement string. That used to be a character arrays till, I think, JDK 17-ish. But nowadays it's a byte array because of UTF-8 and all that things, and Unicode. And now every place I stumble over in the code will be not using hello, but will be using devox. And what I need to add, both of these set accessible only works because I have this at opens, because it is already protected a little bit, so you normally can't make things from other modules accessible just by calling set accessible, but in this case I added an at opens, which allows me to do. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, when I remove that static block and do that here, and let's define, we can use a var. Var hello is hello. Hello. Hello 2. Hello 2. New string. What will this print? Devox hello? Yes. Because in that case, my reference to hello 2, because I'm passing that string to new string before calling replace with, is another instance which I can't manipulate. And what I found out when I wrote that examples, and because I only use VI for showing you that here to prevent IDE hints, IntelliJ, or the SonarLint plugin for IntelliJ, says, please remove that new string. That's unnecessary. It isn't. In all other cases, it is. So probably don't do these things at home. Okay, integers, strings. What about exceptions? IO exception, is that unchecked or checked? So interview question, check. So this compiles or does not compile? Should not? Yeah, does not. So I would have to catch or declare it, right? But I really don't want to. What can I do? Lombok. I don't want to I mean, I'm calling Java and I don't want to include a jar. Wouldn't it be nice if I can say throw unchecked? This one? Works, compiles. And throws an I/O exception without catching or declaring it. So this only works because I have prepared the method. Let me put it up here. And what you need to know is, I ask you unchecked or checked, and that's a concept that only Java, the language, has, but not the JVM itself. The JVM does not know about checked exceptions. It only knows unchecked exceptions. So the compiler is checking your checked exceptions and is checking that you catch or declare them. But it happens that if you use that type of method, which is a static method, which gets a t extends exception, throws t, and you throw t by casting it, the compiler comes out of its mind and does not longer know that you are throwing that exception. And now you could discuss at the Oracle booth, for example, or at Azul or at Wellsoft, if that's a bug, but it's so long in the JDK, maybe nowadays it's a feature. And so if you don't want to use Lombok, but want to have sneaky throws, this two-liner in normal code does the same for you. I don't know if they implement it the same way. Probably they are doing more advanced stuff, but that's a poor man alternative for that. Arrays. I assume I'm not that much cheating any longer, but did you know that you can, though this is a method which returns an array, right? But did you know that we can put the braces here? That runs. That is, I think I've never done C, but somebody said to me that's how you do it in C code. And because when Java was invented, the main target audience were luring people from the C world. And therefore, it is allowed to declare it that way. And it works. No trick. You can do it in your whole code base. No impact, just probably colleagues asking you what you've done. OK. So the next thing, URL literals. Oh, somebody, I think the person knows it already. So you can just write any URL in your methods. Just HTTPS, HTTP. Is it devoxcom? And it works. How does it work? Labels. We have these things called labels in Java, where you can label things like, I don't know, a for loop. I5 I plus. And unfortunately, we don't have a goto. Then we can do go to HTTP. But we have continue. So you can apply labels to certain elements, and then you can pass that label name to continue or break, to basically say where to break. Or yeah, I was always thinking there are not that many cases nowadays where we use it, but it's still in the language. And it happens to be that this is a label, then the double colon, and this is just a plain comment. So it works by accident. Yeah? Okay, don't use it, I think, but probably. No more magic. we happen to use enums oftentimes just as an enumeration and forget that we can use enums with more stuff. For example, we can put static methods, instance methods, whatever on it. And what many people normally see is we have A, B, C, but you can omit all enum instances. I once knew how they are called. So you have basically an enum without any instance, and then you can put static methods on it. And in that case, it's more like a utility class, which you can't subclass because enums are final by default, and where you can't create any instance because an enum constructor is private by default. So you can use that for your utility classes. I would not do it because it's unexpected for most other people, but if you're doing code golf, that's shorter. So in code golf, I wonder if there's a reason to provide or to hide the constructor, but it's shorter. So if you are not paid by characters, by ripping off characters, if you're paid by removing characters, convert your utility classes to enums without instances. Okay, so 5 minutes, yeah. 2 things.
I think you lost your video.
I think. I saw it here. Okay, thanks for the hint. Anyways, so the last 2 things I will show you is the JDK introduced that whole stream things, which includes functions, suppliers, and consumers. And I mean, they introduced special types. So a consumer has no inheritance with a function or a consumer. But if we really think about it, a supplier is conceptually a function which takes nothing and returns something. And a void consumer is a function who receives something but does not return. And in theory, we can use that. So I can change that to a void supplier, can change that to a void consumer. And because a function, the method is not called accept, it's called apply. We need to use apply here. But that does not compile. Because there is that void wrapper type, which we don't use that often, but that requires me to pass in null here and return null there. And yeah, my supplier needs. And now it works. So in theory, that could be used if we just had a way to omit that passing null and returning null. And for the void wrapper type, you have to use null. So return a new object wouldn't compile either. So yeah. But when I found out that there is a big void, I was surprised. And the last thing, so there is that var. It's not a keyword, but we can use var and let the compiler infer which type it is. And in this case, I'm constructing a new anonymous object. So what's the type of var, of O? Is it object? No, it is not object, because what we often forget is it's the most exact type. And you can see that if we say O is a new object and try to reassign it, then it is incompatible because object cannot be converted to an anonymous object. That's the same if we would use var o new array list. My O is an array list and not a list like we used to write before that. So in theory, I can never reassign that O except by using reflection to get the class and using new instance to create a new instance. And now to the last thing, because I mean, I betrayed you, I cheated you, I showed you things you probably don't know, which looks like magic. But sometimes, if you don't know what the code does, it's just bad code. So what does this print? What's that implementing? What does that function do? Oof. Just throw a guess at me. Is even. Yeah. That's if it's even. So if I don't know what the modulo operator is, I just start by, the first number is true, is true, and then the next number is not even, so it's false, it's true, it's false, it's true, so I just keep flipping it. Yeah, for small numbers, that's not a problem. For such numbers, that may have a runtime implication. Yeah, so you don't see that on the code, but so sometimes if the code does things you don't know, it's just bad code. Remember that. So I'm at the end. I would be happy if you give me feedback or rate me with how many stars, however you want to. If you have questions, come to me because my time is over. Thanks for listening and have a nice conference in the next days.